Hi, it's Marcus Collins from MA Properties. So 2023 is done. 2024 has already started, and in fact, in many aspects, the real estate market in 2024 has already started. So now it's the opportunity that we take in MA Properties to look back at the last year, get our crystal ball out to see what's going to happen, or our predictions for what's going to happen in 2024. And in this video, I'm going to focus on the Lexington single-family home market. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to show you lots of information in this video, and you can look at it specifically around single family in Lexington, but maybe you're interested in a broader selection of towns. And so there's a lot of information on our website that will give you insight in terms of what happened last year. Less so about the predictions, that's kind of what we're here to talk about really. But if you're really interested in information about what's happening in different towns, then I recommend you go to maproperties.com, go to the statistics tab, real estate statistics, and then you'll see a screen like this, and there are probably 20 different statistics for about 50 different towns. So there's lots of information in there. If you're a buyer and or a seller in those towns, the information you need to make those valid judgments is all within that. Focusing a little bit on Lexington, some of you may well have seen the Lexington Market Review we put out every year, actually since 2015, which is a bit scary. I just looked at that the other day to find out we actually started doing it in 2015. We're in the middle of writing our 2023-2024 version. You should have that by early February in mailboxes if you live in Lexington. If you don't, on our website, or you can reach out to us and we can get you a copy really easily. So look forward to that in your mailboxes early February, so in a couple of weeks' time when we're recording this video, so the Lexington Market Review 2023-2024. But here's the sneak peek of what we're going to kind of talk about in a lot more detail in that publication. I'm going to focus this evening on single-family homes. I'm going to then look at some analysis section on it, and then get the crystal ball out and see what we think is going to happen in 2024. So, single-family homes. First graph I'm going to show, there's going to be lots of graphs here, and then I'll give an explanation of what each of these graphs mean and what's going on. This one is the number of homes sold. I show a decade worth of data. What you can see in 2020 and 2021 is a high number of home sales because of the churn, if you will, people changing their housing requirements because of COVID. And that tailed off in 2022 and 2023, specifically as the effects of COVID or effect of lockdown really began to tail off, but also as interest rates rose. Now, normally when we talk about declining home sales, we focus on buyer sentiment really, a reduction in buyer sentiment. But there's more going on this year than just the buyer side. So let's focus first of all on the seller side. This is the number of homes listed in, say, the last 10 years. And as you can see, the high numbers in 2020, 2021, but that reduction in 22, specifically in the second half of 22, as interest rates began to rise, and now a further drop in the number of home listings in 2023. And overall, home sales were down about 18%, home listings were down about 12%. So part of that reduction in home sales is a consequence of there simply not being that many homes to sell. And you can see that here in this information. If you now focus on the buy side, we've got a couple of metrics we can look at to get a sense of what buyer confidence is doing. First one is days on the market. How long did it take a home, on average, to go under agreement? As you can see, we were in the kind of low 20s over the last couple of years. That jumped to 37, really consistent with what we saw in 2018, 2019, when we came down from the downturn in the housing market in 2008, 2009, 2010 timeframe. So we're getting back to some extent to the numbers that we saw then. So big increase in the number of days on the market. The other metric we like to look at is the sell price to list price ratio. This is, imagine a home comes on the market at $1 million, sells for $1 million. That's 100% sell price to list price ratio. On average, Lexington was at about 100%. since in this graph here, since 2014, excuse me. Big jump during COVID, and actually during the first half of 2022. It dropped dramatically in the second half of 22 as interest rates began to rise, and that's dropped even further, or actually continued the trend that we saw in the second half of 2022, down to about 102%. Still over 100, so not to be sniffed at, if you will, but still much lower than we've traditionally seen in the market. So here's what we've got. Less listings, which would ordinarily drive higher competition, and therefore days on the market would be reduced and sale price to list price would be reduced. But in this market in 2023, that's been reversed. We've got higher days on the market and a lower sale price to list price ratio. So we've got a lack of listings, a lack of seller confidence, if you will, and we've got a lack of buyer confidence in the market, compounding, and that's why we saw a dramatic reduction, really, in the number of home sales last year. We can delve a little bit deeper into that sale price to list price ratio. It's a great metric to get a sense. Literally month by month is what's happening. First half of 2023, somewhat elevated, usually is in the first half of the year. We often say that the beginning of the year is the right time to bring a home on the market. What happened in 2023, though, interest rates continued to rise, but there would seem to be no end to that rise in interest rates. And that, no surprise, meant that that ratio began to decrease even further, just because buyers were finding they simply couldn't afford the homes that they really want. And we had the situation in 23 where a buyer would get a pre-approval perhaps in September. They found a house to buy in October, only to find that the interest rates had jumped by 0.5 or 0.75%, and they could no longer afford. Their pre-approval needed to be readjusted because of that increase in the interest rates, and they found they simply couldn't afford the home anymore. And so that was a big effect, specifically in the second half of 23, as those rates just continued to rise. And I'll show you in a moment actually the way those rates rose. The other picture, though, so lack of sellers, buyer confidence severely dented by rising interest rates, but there was another effect going on in the market as well. So if I take this information and I break it down from existing homes and new construction homes, you can see that here. Blue is existing homes, the green bars are new construction. What we saw in 2022 was a large number of new construction homes being built, but very few selling. We dropped from 60 sales in 2021 to 40 sales in 2022. But developers continued to build. And so we had an excess of inventory at the start of 2023 that needed to be worked out of the system. And you can see that here. The green bar, the new construction sale price to list price ratio, dramatically lower, actually less than 100%. The existing home market in the early part of the year, well over 100%, dropping to about 100% in the second half of the year. But that sale price to list price ratio for new construction much lower. And what this was developers having to sell. They really did have to sell. Developers can't stay in the house. Homeowners can, of course. Developers have to sell their home, and so they were forced to reduce the price, and hence that sale price to list price ratio declined because of that oversupply that we saw at the beginning of 2023. Interestingly, we're seeing a similar effect here at the beginning of 2024. There is a large number of new construction homes on the market. In fact, last weekend, there weren't any homes below $2 million, and most of the homes on the market over $2 million were new construction. And so we're seeing a very similar pattern emerge in 2024, with developers will have to reduce prices to get rid of that excess inventory they've got right now, beginning of 24. So you can see that clearly from the graph that you're looking at here. So well, let's take a look now at the sell price to list price distribution. So what this is how many homes sold at the different sell price to list price points. As you can see from this graph, it's about 50-50, about parity, 43-57, about 50-50. The numbers that we saw prior to COVID actually were around about that 50-50 mark. During COVID, it was 20% selling for less than the asking price, 80% selling for at or over the asking price. Clearly a big difference from the data we saw actually in 2022 to where we are in 2023. A further price or further proof, if you like, that we've got low buyer sentiment at this point. They're just not able and not willing to pay way over the asking price for homes. One, they didn't have to. Secondly, they couldn't afford to. So sale price to list price distribution. Our website actually will allow you to look at this changing over the years. This is the 2023 data. If you go to our website, you can look at it from 2018 all the way through to 2023. And it's interesting to see how that changes over those years from 50-50, 80-20, and back to 50-50. So what most sellers and buyers for that matter are interested in, of course, is prices. Where are average prices in Lexington? So let's take a look at that, because there's a little bit of nuance to this too. So here's the basic numbers. As you can see, we were at about 1.72 last year. We rose to 1.82 this year. So on the face of it, a relatively good rise in prices. But there's more to this picture than that rise. And I want to show you some information that kind of tells you why we've seen what looks like a relatively impressive price increase, but actually really isn't. First thing is new construction home sales. I mentioned before that we saw a big reduction in 2022. You can see that here, 60 in 2021, 41 in 2022, 50 in 2023, and that's that kind of carryover where developers reduce the price to sell their homes. But on average, new construction homes are selling for the high twos, existing homes are selling in the high ones. So there's about $1 million difference between average new construction prices and average non-new construction prices. And so this is this increase in the new construction beginning to skew that data. What's skewing it even more is the luxury market. So we define the luxury market as homes that sell over 2.5 million. It rose upwards to almost over 50 homes in 2021. That continued in 2022. And really bucking the trend here, remember we've seen that kind of 18% fewer home sales in the market in general. Luxury just about kept parity with it. It dropped a little bit, of course. No surprise there, but it really did keep up, really did kind of say buck the trend. And that increase to that 49 homes in comparison to the other homes that sold meant that average was skewed a little bit too because of the number of luxury homes that sold and because of the fewer number of non-luxury homes and non-new construction homes that sold. Hopefully that was clear. Let me show you the numbers anyway. So what this graph shows, the orange bar, the number of new construction homes that sold. Just showed you that data actually. But what's important here is the blue line and the red line. The blue line is the average price of a new construction home. In 2022, you see a rapid rise during COVID actually, but in 2022 we're at about 2.9 million. In 2023 we were under 2.8 million, so a $100,000 reduction in the average new construction home price. Looking at the red line, which is the existing homes, non-new construction homes, that really hasn't risen very much. In fact, since 2020, the average in 2021 through to 2023, that's about a 3% rise. So we've not seen very much new price appreciation in the non-new construction market. We've actually seen price depreciation in the new construction market. So that's kind of where we are prices. The headline numbers look good, but when you kind of unpack it a little bit and you look at the detail, it's not as good a picture. And as I say, over the last 2 years, we've seen about a 3% rise in average prices for non-new construction and a deep decrease in average prices, first time ever really, in that new construction sector as well. So, what's going on? So, no surprise really. I mean, the press is full of it. Of course, interest rates are the key driver here. I've shown you here the interest rates from 2010 all the way through to 2024. And what's happening in the sellers specifically is that many sellers bought prior to the rise in interest rates, before that 2021, 22 timeframe. They bought while interest rates were running at about 3 or 4%, perhaps even lower if they actually got an arm to buy their home. Now, of course, if they were to move to a new home, their interest rates would jump from 3 or 4% to 6, perhaps even 7%. And that's what put sellers off selling. They just didn't want to swap their very low mortgage for a very high mortgage, and so they stayed put. Now, will they stay put forever? Clearly not, but that's what happened in 2023. That was the issue. Now, buyers specifically, and I'll jump in a little bit tighter into that time frame, as you can see during 2023, interest rates continued to rise, and they rose until about November. And so a little bit of confidence in the early part of 2023, but that inexorable rise of interest rates just put a complete damper, in fact, put the stop sign, if you will, on the real estate market, not just in Lexington, clearly in other towns too. We saw very similar characteristics in the single-family home market in Arlington, for example. And what we were saying at the end of 2023 is that we really need to see a reduction in interest rates and a trend of reductions, not a kind of one week, 2 week down. We need to see a reduction in those interest rates over an extended period. And we seem to be having that. So, hold on a minute here when I'm recording this, it's just, it's about mid-January. We've definitely seen a reduction upwards of 7.5% to well below 6.5%. That's a big reduction. We really need to see more to bring more confidence into the market. And so that's really been the key driver, that inexorable rise in interest rates throughout 2023. The market, started off relatively strongly, but then it just became a very weak market. No sellers in the market and buyers not really out and about. Looks like, though, without giving too much away in the predictions, looks like that may be changing, though, as we go into 2024. In terms of the predictions, now we should kind of take these somewhat with a grain of salt. This is the Mortgage Banker Association predictions. They change month by month as more information comes in. No surprise there, I guess. But we've been tracking this for a long time, and they're not that accurate. But let's kind of take it on face value. What they're predicting is that by the end of the year, we'll be at around 6%. That's clearly much lower than the 7.3, 7.2% that we saw in the second half of 2023. So the direction, the trend looks very positive for interest rates to come down. And I think, this is the key metric that people are looking at. People ask about the election and other things going on. Yes, yeah, maybe, but really what people are focused on here, buyers and sellers for that, is the interest rates. As interest rates decline, that means buyers can come back into the market and can afford more. As interest rates decline, that means sellers can put their houses on the market knowing that, yes, they're going to buy at a higher interest rate, but then they can chase interest rates lower with refinancing and so on. And actually we saw in the second half of 23, many lenders saying, you can do a free refi within 3 years. So anytime in the next 3 years, you can do a free refi. The idea here is that you can refi your mortgage at those much lower rates. And I think we'll probably see those continue as the mortgage lenders want to drive some activity into the market. So that's kind of where we are with the mortgage rate predictions. So we're really getting back to normal. At the end of the day, who are today's buyers, who are today's sellers? It's really, many of you will have seen this before in presentations that we've given. It's really about downsizers and first-time home buyers driving the market. Specifically in, for example, Arlington, downsizers from Lexington moving to Arlington, first-time home buyers moving into Arlington, allowing second, third movers to actually move into the Lexington market. So we're getting back to that normal equilibrium between downsizers and first-time home buyers entering the market and downsizers coming in. So that's kind of back to where the drivers in the market are going to be. So predictions. Okay, so let's break this down in terms of buyers and in terms of sellers. Interest rates do look like they're trending down, and some anecdotal information from some open houses that we've held. We've sold some homes already this year. The winter has been relatively mild, relatively snow-free, should we say. Not really mild, it's quite cold, of course, but snow-free. That does tend to bring the buyers out, and the buyers are out in large numbers. Interest rates trending down and continuing to trend down will only bring more of those buyers into the market, and rates, dropping to around about that. They're already in the mid sixes. Perhaps we'll see at 6. We can hope, I guess, sooner than the end of the year. That will clearly bring buyers back in the market. But we need to be cautious here because 6%, 6.6% is clearly way higher than 3 or 4. And so buyers will still be constrained by price. They will not necessarily be able to offer some of the prices and some of the activity we've seen in the market in prior years, just because interest rates are going to put something of a damper upon that. So, sellers. Sellers clearly stopped selling during a large number stopped selling in 2023. That there is a pent-up demand there, or pent-up supply there, I guess better way to put it. Sellers who want to move couldn't or were reluctant to. At some point, the house no longer meets their requirements, be it too large or too small, and so they will move. And so we will see an increased number of sellers in the market. Clearly not at the levels we saw during COVID, probably more likely what we saw in the 2018, 2019 levels. But we will definitely see more sellers coming into the market. Remember though, as you're a seller, there are buyers out there, but they're constrained by how much they can afford. And so the normal rules that we've talked about, endlessly really, around creating the product that today's buyers want. They really won't have any additional funds to do anything. So make sure your home is move-in ready, because if you think the buyers will, I won't bother painting because the buyers can do that. Yeah, but they can't anymore. They never could really, but they definitely can't this year. Interest rates are so high, they're going to be pegged by how much money they've got and what their monthly repayments will be. So creating a product is key. And then the rules around staging and marketing and that follow directly on from that. So sellers need to be cautious that this isn't COVID years. This wasn't the time when they could put their home on the market and expect 10, 20, 30 offers on these homes. Those days are gone. And even if there is a lot of activity on the home, there are a large number of buyers who really cannot necessarily afford what they could have afforded 3-4 years ago. So that's kind of a cautionary message for today's sellers as you come on the market. Price appreciation has been relatively low over the last 2 years. Remember that. Pricing is probably the most important aspect of bringing your home on the market, but also creating that product, marketing it, staging it, and so on. That's vitally important in this market. So that is the Lexington Market Review, if you will, for single-family homes in the town of Lexington. Hope you enjoyed that. There's a lot more information in the market review as well as on our website. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We have lots more information. There's a lot more beside what I've showed you this evening. And so if you do want any of that, just please do reach out to us. So with that, I'll say thank you very much, and look forward to talking to anybody who has any questions about the Lexington market. Bye.